A storm is coming, Frank says. A storm that will swallow the children, and I will deliver them from the kingdom of Bane. I will deliver the children back to their doorsteps. I'll send the monsters back to the underground. I'll send them back to a place where no one else can see them. Except for me. Because I am Donnie Darko.
Friends, it's that time of year. The weather is getting colder, the nights are getting spookier, and my watch list is getting weirder.
You're weird.
Sorry.
Among the classics for Halloween movie nights is Richard Kelly's directorial debut that both shocked attendees of Sundance in 2001, as well as risen to the ranks of the coveted title Cult Classic in the more than 20 years since it was made. It's a movie that resonates with teenagers on a level that few movies have in the past couple of decades, and on its own it stands as a crowd-pleasing adventure that is sure to intrigue you as much as it confuses you. I'm talking, of course, about the time-traveling, water-bending, and deliciously disturbing story of Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko?
Mr. Darko.
Donnie.
Donnie Darko?
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Or Donnie.
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko. You know, when I was 13 or 14, my English teacher put this movie on for us in class at the end of the day, and I don't remember exactly why he did that, but I do remember that the movie really made an impression on me. I borrowed a VHS from a friend that night and watched it again, and most of my intrigue came from the incredibly complex plot, but mixed with the feeling of a John Hughes movie gone full emo. It was exactly what 14-year-old me was into.
But I'm over all that. I'm painting and stuff.
And in the years since, I've seen this movie at least once a year, and many times more than that, and every time I've tried to describe this movie to someone who hasn't seen it, I find myself romanticizing the movie's tone and angsty mood over the deeper themes and overall plot. And that's because, as we all know, Donnie Darko is just one of those movies that you kinda have to see.
You know, I love that movie, the way they shot it. It's so, like futuristic, you know?
So, today's episode is going to be a very dark trip down memory lane as we reawaken my inner teenager and figure out once and for all, what's Donnie Darko really about? Donnie Darko is the story of a teenage boy who's visited in what he thinks are hallucinations by a strange man in a bunny suit who tells him that the world is coming to an end and it's up to Donnie to stop it. Along the way, we're in for an unraveling mystery of time travel, tangent universes, and even a definitive deconstruction on the sex lives of Smurfs. What?
Smurfs are asexual. They don't even have reproductive organs under those little white pants.
Now, this movie could be described in a number of ways with varying degrees of truth to each. Some people would call it a science fiction movie, and some would say it's a borderline horror, and I've even heard it described as a coming-of-age film with supernatural elements. And to be fair, those are all pretty accurate.
There are other things that need to be taken into account here, like the whole spectrum of human emotion.
But as is tradition on this show, we will not be going on an Easter egg hunt, but instead, we're gonna watch the movie and investigate the background and behind the scenes of it, and then I'm gonna formulate my own theory on what this movie is really about. Oh, and for the super fans out there, don't worry. I'll be watching the Richard Kelly director's cut of the movie so we can get as granular as we want.
I could spend my whole life debating it over and over again, weighing the pros and cons, and in the end, I still wouldn't have any proof.
So, Donnie, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, is a troubled but mostly average suburban teenager. The only thing is, he's got a severe sleepwalking problem, often taking him miles away from his house in the middle of the night. And one night, Donnie is visited by Frank, a mysterious man in a Halloween costume whose face is hidden under a sinister-looking bunny mask.
Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
Frank tells Donnie that the world is coming to an end, and we're immediately left wondering what the f*** is going on.
There's nothing broken in my brain.
I know.
The film is about life. It's about the complexity of life. It's about a boy becoming a man. It's about a man confronting himself. It's about the death of the Reagan era. Yeah, it's about a whole lot of things. But part of what's essential for me is it's not about any one thing, right? It's about a broad spectrum of the human experience. And it can't just be reduced to a single explanation. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that you can continually get lost in it and try to navigate your way through the story again and again and again, and hopefully see something new every single time.
It's established in the movie that Donnie suffers from a few mental health afflictions that call into question the validity of any of the supernatural activity that he's experiencing. And of course, this is by design. Richard Kelly talked on the director's cut commentary about how he unintentionally wrote Donnie as some sort of reflection of himself.
Maybe you should be the one in therapy, then Mom and Dad can pay someone $200 an hour to listen to all your thoughts, so we don't have to.
This, of course, isn't anything new. I mean, we all have an inherent case of main character syndrome when it comes to writing what we know, and while it can be a bit heavy-handed on the tragic leading man who always seems like the smartest guy in the room, the character is still very well balanced with enough realistic flaws and development that it really works for this kind of story.
Damn it, Donnie, why do you gotta get so smart on us?
When a mysterious jet engine falls from the sky and lands on Donnie's house, it crashes through the roof and lands directly over Donnie's bed. A bed that Donnie would have been sleeping in, and by extension, died in if he hadn't been sleepwalking with his new friend that night. This isn't explained directly in the film, but what happens is that Donnie was supposed to be killed by that engine, but by not dying in the accident, he caused a split in the timeline, which created a tangent reality.
The idea of a fourth dimension, I don't think that any human brain could ever comprehend what the fourth dimension really is, and that's where you get into the God machine kind of thing. With the director's cut, what I'm putting out there is that if these people of Middlesex succeed in sending that jet engine back and helping this kid and his superpowers send this jet engine back, that they've proved something, that they've contacted something. They've contacted a divine higher power or something, and
oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Keep that one to yourself.
Now, none of the town's residents seem consciously aware of this, but the movie has an eerie tone that sort of implies that deep down, they all know that something is not right, and it has to do with Donnie. And this new reality is where our film takes place.
It fell from the plane. Then what happened to the plane?
Donnie's day-to-day life leading up to the end of the world is mostly a series of disturbing events that serve as building blocks for the surprising yet inevitable conclusion. Donnie doesn't know how, but he's gotta save the world after all. On his mission list is flooding his high school by slashing a water main with an axe and sticking the weapon in the head of the school's mascot, and the only explanation that we get for any of this, at first, is the words, "They made me do it," written by Donnie on the sidewalk. Now, let's stick a pin in that for later.
What else? What else? Principal Cole, I'll show you what else.
Donnie mostly goes about his days like a normal kid. He has his friends, a few enemies, including Seth Rogen, and even a new girlfriend named Gretchen, who seems to be just as f***ed up as Donnie.
I guess some people are just born with tragedy in their blood.
Now, one thing to know about the character of Donnie Darko is that in the context of this story, he's a good kid. He's played as mature for his age, but Gyllenhaal did a wonderful job of portraying that underlying teenage innocence and ignorance that shines through in every scene. Donnie's parents, while having their own individual flaws, love him and genuinely show him warmth and support no matter what. It's sort of understood that he's misunderstood, if that makes any sense.
How's it feel to have a wacko for a son?
It feels wonderful.
He acts out and has a very rebellious streak, but he's not really hurting anyone or doing anything other than just not complying with school activities and etiquette.
He asked me to forcibly insert the Lifeline exercise card into my anus.
When approaching the role, it's sort of hard to figure out because there's so many things that he gets hit with. I think that Donnie is what he comes in contact with. In the simplest terms, like in most abstract terms, I could say it's a journey. Like it's just a journey about discovering who you are. And the irony of the whole thing is that, like, hopefully by the end, it's not only Donnie who realizes it, but the audience in a way. And they have to go back and they have to watch it again, and they have to watch it again. But it's just like this ridiculous, fantastic, completely absurd yet completely naturalistic and realistic mixture of humor, like sadness, comedy, and madness, like rolled up in this ball of this like crazy story journey.
And if you're cute and you're horny, then you're probably happy that you don't know who you are or why you're even alive.
The people of Middlesex, the fictional suburban town that Donnie lives in, are all unique characters that this movie could follow on their own and still make it captivating. Among them is Donnie's antagonistic and conservative teacher, Miss Farmer, and his much cooler teacher, Miss Pomeroy, played by Drew Barrymore, who also produced the film. And we also have Donnie's sister, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, his two parents, and who could forget the town's favorite resident, Jim Cunningham.
Pay close attention. You could miss something.
Hello, my name is Jim Cunningham.
One night, Donnie and Gretchen are out at a midnight movie when Gretchen falls asleep in her seat, and Donnie is visited once again by Frank. This time, Frank reveals himself to be a handsome young teen with a horrible wound on his eye. We aren't sure who he is and how he connects to Donnie just yet, but he asks Donnie to go to Jim Cunningham's house and burn it to the ground. Another mission that isn't clear to us just yet, but remember, we're coming back. See, when Donnie floods his school, class gets canceled, which is how he meets Gretchen when he saves her from bullies walking home. When he burns down the house, it gets exposed that the town hero, Jim Cunningham, is actually a depraved child predator with a secret room dedicated to his crimes. This exposes him and leads to his arrest. Meanwhile, Donnie is also experiencing his perceived hallucinations again, only this time he sees a floating stream of liquid coming from the chests of his family, which all seem to lead them on their own paths. This seems like imagery meant to tell us that their actions are predetermined. But how? Well, we're not there yet.
If we were able to see our destinies manifest themselves visually, then we would be given a choice.
Donnie's path leads him to his father's closet where he finds a loaded handgun. Now, while all of this is going on, there's all sorts of little subplots to follow as well. One of which is the discovery Donnie makes of an old book on time travel written by the town's local shut-in, Roberta Sparrow, aka Lady Death. See, Lady Death wrote a book on time travel, and when Donnie discovers it, he realizes that that's the key to preventing the world from ending. He needs to go back, but he doesn't know how or when to go to. So, in order to get the real reveal of this movie, we need to cover how it all goes down in the final act. Brace yourselves.
The storm is coming. You must hurry.
It's Halloween, 1988. And Donnie's parents are out of town. His mom is on a last-minute flight to take his younger sister Sam to a dance contest. His father isn't home, and he and his older sister decide to throw a party to celebrate his sister getting into college. Tonight is the night that will change everything. Tonight is the final night on Donnie's doomsday calendar. Tonight, the world ends.
Then he said that the world was coming to an end.
Do you think the world is coming to an end?
While at the party, Donnie feels drawn to Lady Death's home to visit her cellar. This idea was planted in his head when Miss Pomeroy told him that the words cellar door were the prettiest combination of words in the English language. Upon arriving with Gretchen and his friends, his bullies attack them and attempt to kill Donnie. And in the struggle, Gretchen is knocked down in the road and run over by a speeding car. Oof. Do you remember the first time you saw this shit? Ugh, it messed me up. So, it's revealed that Frank is actually Elizabeth's boyfriend, and when Donnie sees him, he pulls out his father's gun and shoots Frank in the eye, killing him. It's a scene that feels like it simultaneously ties everything together while also raising even more questions. Donnie takes Gretchen's body back and carries out his final heroic deed when he turns back time to the night of the plane crash and goes home to lay in bed and greet his ultimate demise. Donnie even laughs as he awaits his death, knowing that the final solution is to erase himself from the people he loves' lives. And this undoes everything that occurred in the Tangent universe and sets the main timeline back on course.
The Deus Ex Machina, the God Machine, that's what saved the rabbits.
The idea of an insurance trap, that this accident is going to ensure that mankind, the fate of all mankind, will be saved. And even Catherine Ross, her character with the placebo scene that was important to restore to the film, she's not going to give Superman Ritalin. You know, he might fly into a wall. You don't do that. You don't give Superman drugs.
So what happened? I mean, what the hell is this movie about? Well, again, in the director's commentary, which I highly recommend, Kelly explains that what's going on between the lines is that when Donnie didn't die in the plane crash, he created a new timeline, which somehow causes the world to end in the future. And apparently, the idea is that in the future, they have technology that allows them to communicate with other timelines, and these unknown heroes of the future need to track Donnie down in his Tangent universe and subconsciously guide him to destroying the Tangent universe he created by not dying. And of course, this would explain why it feels like each person Donnie interacts with is unknowingly guiding him to the ultimate conclusion. Drew Barrymore gives him a subliminal clue to go to the cellar. Miss Farmer is the one who had to cancel and ask Donnie's mom to go on the dance trip, which is the plane that the engine comes from. And all of Donnie's arson, vandalism, and destruction of property caused the events of the story to set into motion, which all led to this finale. So basically, it's a movie about a kid who's visited by reverse ghosts from the future that need his help to destroy his own universe to save the main universe. Sounds like some kind of superhero.
It's like some sort of superhero or something.
What makes you think I'm not?
Donnie also has water superpowers, which is a bit clearer in the director's cut, but you never see him do anything magical or mystical, and this of course was an artistic and possibly budgetary choice made by Richard Kelly, but I think it actually makes the movie better. The whole movie is meant to be ambiguous, and I wholeheartedly believe that that's why so many different types of people love this movie. Now, what do I think Kelly was really trying to say with this story? Well, after taking all of this into account and relying on my own interpretation of what this movie is, it plays to me as a movie that's exploring the complex inner feelings of a young kid who wants to simultaneously blend in and stand out. An elaborate story that serves as Kelly's future self going back in time to tell his past self that all the pain, all the loneliness, all the darkness, it'll all lead to a brighter and happier future. In a lot of ways, it just feels like Kelly is trying to say that all the bullshit you go through as a teen is what makes you who you are today. And hopefully, that's a good thing.
What the fuck, ass?
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for a job. In fact, I've made up my mind to find a career that I can learn and grow into. Who am I? I'm a hard worker. I set high goals, and I've been told that I'm persistent. And I'm thinking, television news might just be something I love, as well as something I happen to be good at.
What is the meaning of success? And how far would you go to be successful? These are just some of the many questions that I'm left with after watching Dan Gilroy's directorial debut film, Nightcrawler. A film that packs many questions and shockingly few answers, as intended by the filmmakers behind it. It's a movie that is firmly planted in literally me culture, with a main character who is equal parts interesting and terrifying, yet strangely observable at the same time.
I think being clear with your objectives is more important than trying to present your ideas in a non-confrontational manner.
For a riveting viewing experience that is sure to entertain you and leave you heavily reflecting on your own morals, Nightcrawler may just be what you're looking for as we follow Lou Bloom, a shady LA loner who gets by on low-level schemes and odd jobs. But when he discovers the dark and dangerous world of freelance crime scene photography, Lou becomes obsessed with rising to the top of the food chain as a professional stringer. Along the way, we're taken for a ride complete with breakneck speed, back alley deals, blackmail, betrayal, manipulation, mentally and physically, and even murder as we watch the unlikely success of a truly despicable person.
Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that.
But what can we learn from this movie and the brilliant first-time filmmaker behind it? What does the character of Louis Bloom say about the news industry, and what does that say about us for watching it? These are all questions I hope to unpack in today's episode, where we take a thrilling look back on Dan Gilroy's film and try to determine once and for all, what's Nightcrawler really about?
I'm not going to list the many benefits of this piece. I think it's probably best you just watch it for yourself.
So, where do we start? How about the same place that Dan Gilroy started? LA crime scene reporting, specifically the world of stringers, a freelance industry of videographers that film crime scenes to sell the footage to news networks. Gilroy was fascinated with photography in general and originally wanted his film to be centered around that medium. But once he learned about the world of news stringers and night crawlers, he found that to be a unique and deeply rich perspective to tell his story. In my opinion, he's right, but with the story being set around this kind of industry, there comes inherent themes that need to be acknowledged. Things like the questionable ethics of certain kinds of journalism and the constant need that we have as an audience to consume it. Are we feeding the beast? Is this our fault? Did we do this? Well, it's not for me, or even Dan Gilroy, to say.
We sat down, he read the script, and I flew to Atlanta. He was doing Prisoners. Mm-hmm. And it's such a big moment for me, and it's such a big moment for him. I'm a first-time director. And look at the trust. Look what he's risking. And we sat down at a dinner, and we had a 4-hour dinner, and we were just so creatively in tune. The first thing he asked me was, how do you see the movie? And I told him, I said, I see it as a success story. And he burst out laughing. He goes, that's how I see it.
Dan Gilroy is an interesting storyteller. He delivered this movie with style and confidence, and I really admire that level of effort. But what I really love is the way that Gilroy plays with the audience by using his main character as someone very unlikable. Of course, this has been done before, but rarely in this way. The character of Lou is clearly a master manipulator and arguably just a flat-out sociopath. He's creepy, his tone and vocal cadence is very unsettling, and he doesn't do anything other than feed a plant that proves that he's even human. But somehow, and for some reason, we want to watch him. We want to see what he's going to do next. We don't want him to lose if that means that our rush would be over. You know what that sounds like to me? The news.
On TV, it looks so real.
Yes, it does.
We see through Lou's many interactions with Nina and other news executives that the business thrives on shock value. Basically, the more bloody and gnarly the news, the better the numbers are for the station. They don't see these victims as people, but rather content for their show, and Lou sees them as financial opportunities, as made clear many times throughout his journey. At one point, he even just says it.
Hey, don't film that, man. He's one of us.
Not anymore, Rick. We're professionals. Ease a sail.
And above all, the very nature of their work has desensitized them to the reality of what it is that they're doing, because we as consumers have given them incentive to do so. Listen to this line that Nina says to Lou in their first interaction.
The best and clearest way that I can phrase it to you, Lou, to capture the spirit of what we air, is think of our newscast as a screaming woman running down the street with her throat cut.
I understand.
This dialogue shows us two things. One, it shows us that this is how Lou is automatically gonna see the industry. He didn't get into it with innocence and become jaded over time. In fact, his first impression is,
Morning news, if it bleeds, it leads.
and this scene solidifies that. But it also shows how Lou finds his competitive edge. He learns from what Nina tells him that the key to success is to find the worst case scenario and exploit it for all it's worth. I think Gilroy clearly wanted to parallel the dynamics of unethical journalism and viral consumption to his film, where we see an unethical man doing horrible things, but we're all sat firmly in our seats lined up to watch it.
If you approach it as a success story in a literal sense, that it's about a young man who's looking for work at the beginning, and at the end is the owner of a thriving business. If you approach it that way, you're taking off the moral judgment. And you're allowing people to say, wait a minute, maybe this isn't just a film about a sociopath or a psychopath, maybe it's about something more, which is what Jake wanted to explore.
So why do we like this? We see this guy blackmail Nina into some unexplained fetish thing. We see him tamper with dead bodies and crime scenes. We see him lie, cheat, steal, and even set up his own partner to be murdered in order to get good footage. This guy should repulse us.
Now, when I say that I want these things, I mean that I want them, and I don't want to have to ask again. And the last thing that I want, Nina, is for you to do the things that I ask you to do when we're alone together in your apartment. Not like the last time.
Jake Gyllenhaal once spoke on the character and stated that he saw Lou as a coyote, someone who wanders around the night, only eats when they need to, and is focused completely on their one sole goal. The character almost seems like an alien impersonating a human in the way that Jake Gyllenhaal gave the character a rapid and sharp speech pattern that is piercing through each page of dialogue.
I need you to tighten up a bit on this, because if you felt like that again, I will terminate you immediately, I promise you.
The actor states that he talked like this as a means of getting all of Gilroy's writing into the scene so that nothing would have to be cut for time. I hope that's true, because honestly, what a compliment. The character of Lou is also similar to that of many Literally Me characters, in that they all seem to share some sort of skewed version of right and wrong. Lou can smile while he's filming a gunshot wound or a dead body, but he can also give a menacing stare when you've pissed him off. He can change on a dime. He is unpredictable.
I think there's a simplification of it being obviously about the media, but I think movies like that have been made before, and I don't think that was what Dan's intention was. I think it's also easy to stop there, because what it does is put blame on something or someone, and I don't think Dan or I or anybody involved in the movie was interested in doing it to put blame on anything. I think we were I was fascinated by, I wanted to make the movie, and I know Dan wrote the movie because it was about showing us where we are a bit, asking us, the audience, who watches that footage, who tunes in even if they don't want to, who allows that to exist, how we're complicit in creating it, and how we can allow somebody like Lou to exist.
So why is Lou not scaring us off? Well, simply, we want to know if he'll win. The movie is like the perfect way to do a villain origin story because they don't make Lou a hero in any sense of the word. He's really only a hero to himself. If the movie had been told from, say, Riz Ahmed's character Rick's perspective, Lou would be all villain in our eyes. But the difference is that from the beginning, we know Lou is only out to do one thing: succeed at something. That's it. He doesn't even know what he wants to succeed at first. He just wants to be a memorable guy with some kind of social status. What we're really watching is a terrible person with vague but intense ambition who figures out his goal as he goes, and in the end, gets everything he wants. Lou wins.
Why you pursue something is equally as important as what you pursue.
See, this differs from other unlikable success stories because in other films, like take for instance The Wolf of Wall Street, Leo as Jordan Belfort was sort of an anti-protagonist. He was definitely loose on his morals and ethics, and he was cold and manipulative to his customers, and he was also immensely motivated. But Scorsese didn't tell the story as a success tale. It was more the rise and fall of a real-life person. But Lou doesn't have the fall, just the rise. He doesn't get his just desserts or learn anything from the many wrongdoings that he's racked up. Instead, he's rewarded for his bad behavior by becoming the head of his own successful news group, Video Production News.
A professional news gathering service. That's how it should be read and that's how it should be said.
And he uses that to obtain an entire catalog of freelance stringers who are ready to go as far as it takes to uphold the company's ruthless standards and methods.
I will never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Think about the feeling that you get when you watch movies like The Sandlot or The Matrix. We see our leading characters start at the bottom, learn their craft like baseball or jiu-jitsu, and then by the end they take on the antagonistic force and win the day. And we feel that warm and cozy feeling because the leading characters we follow are generally likable and good. But with Lou, he is none of those things. But he follows the traditional outline, only Gilroy replaced the likability with ruthless determination and the good nature with gross manipulative charm. Take for example this scene where Lou is literally dragging a body closer to the headlights of a flipped car in order to get a better shot. This behavior is horrifying, but the music and the framing is inspirational and triumphant. This certainly makes for a conflicting feeling about what we're seeing. So what's the point of it all? Why do we care if a bad person gets everything they want if it means sacrificing innocent people for their own desires? Well, I don't think we're really supposed to know. See, Dan Gilroy seems to be happy raising questions rather than giving answers or his own commentary. I find this to be immensely annoying when trying to figure out what the movie wants us to think, but I think that's also kind of the point. Gilroy's ambition was to create a movie that shows us the world and lets us decide if we're morally conflicted enough to watch it go down. He isn't interested in judging Lou or the other stringers for their loose morals, but rather he's interested in what we might think of their behavior once we've seen behind the curtain.
We do indict local television news in Los Angeles to some degree, in the sense that they do lean very heavily into violent graphic images, but I understand the dilemma they're in. And this is one of the things thematically I was always hoping for. At the end of the film, somebody might go, okay, it's not just local television news. I watch this stuff. And what does that say about me? And it's a bigger, more complex issue that this woman who came in, who was, she's trying to buck the system, trying to change, but what is she up against? She's up against human nature. We are all programmed to watch this stuff. I go down the 405 and I'm stuck in a traffic jam for an hour, and I realize there's a crash on the other side, and the traffic jam's because everybody's looking. Right. And I tell myself, I'm not going to effing look. I'm not going to look. 9 times out of 10, I look over. It's just, we're hardwired for it. So I'm not presenting any solutions or really any answers. I'm just trying to raise questions like, look at what's going on. What is the effect of this?
So, at the end of the day, what I take away from Nightcrawler is that it's a movie about success, the cost of getting success, and the vicious cycle of perpetuating success by our deep and dark desire to watch bad things happen. It's not a movie that says I'm a bad person for consuming unethically sourced news, and it's not saying you're a bad person for it, and it's not saying that Lou is a bad person for it. It's simply saying that this is how it is, and you can do with that information what you will. And that, my friends, is what Nightcrawler is really about.
Thanks for coming out to talk.